Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we're not going to be painting these are already painted as you can see, besides that captain. We will be painting him, but this red desert theme we're going to be doing on these old school Necrons here. I actually picked these up for really cheap. Guy just wanted to get rid of them. I don't know why, but grabbed them and I thought we'd do them in the same style. And at some point we'll get to this monolith, but not today. Here are the paints that I used up on screen now. I do recommend that you just use your own stuff. There's no need to go out and buy a bunch of new paints just to follow along here, if you want to follow along, that is. However, Martane Iron Earth, you will probably need that one if you don't have it. Alright, and jumping straight in, we're grabbing Bugman's Glow and we're going to start with the scarabs. So I can tell you it is such a treat to finally be painting these old miniatures. Ever since I was a kid I was fascinated with these old Necrons and like the green plastic bar that you get with them that goes in their gun. Even though we're not going to be keeping it green for this video, but yeah, I've always wanted to paint these, so this is a real treat. And now we're painting up the captain, so obviously he is not old school, he is new school. But I wanted to get your guys' opinions. Do you like the older models or do you like the newer ones? Because I'm kind of on the fence, like I really do like both. I think that the new ones just have so many more details to them than the old ones, but the old ones sort of have this style that I don't think has quite been recreated in the new ones. Alright, the first coat is down, so they're looking alright so far, but there's plenty more steps to come. Up next we have Martane's Iron Earth. So this is definitely the most integral part to this paint. If you don't have this, it's not going to work, and you really want to lather it on so that you get that cracking effect, which I'll show later on. Later on being right now, in fact. So I filmed a time lapse here of the scarabs, just the paint drying and cracking up, but it doesn't really show it, so I'm going to show some old footage from the first time I did this. However, if you want to skip ahead here, feel free to, because this is about as interesting as watching paint dry. Oh, wait a minute. Alright, so here they are with their cracks. I think they turned out alright. They didn't turn out as well as the other models, I don't reckon. The other models, I don't know, just turned out a lot better in my opinion. But you can see it's got the cracks to it, so it's not too bad. The scarabs even turned out good in my opinion. I'm noticing though, being a miniature painter on YouTube, you gotta have like really pristine nails. I'm thinking I gotta go to like the nail salon or something. Is that something that miniature YouTubers have to do? Anyways, up next we're using the Rune Fang Steel because I don't have another metal paint at the moment. Different one probably would have been better, maybe like a bolt gun metal Games Workshop, that would have been cool. But we don't have that, and like I said at the start, you should use like what you've got instead of going out and buying new stuff. So all the metal parts are getting the Rune Fang Steel, and then we're gonna do the Balthazar's Gold next. You can see I'm using a dry brush here, and we just want to apply a little bit into some spots that we think would rust up naturally. Probably should have looked up what rust does naturally, but I'm just winging it here. We're going to be doing other layers to this to enhance that rusted effect, so definitely don't put too much of this on. Up next we're using Skeleton Horde. This is one of my favourite washes. I know it says contrast paint, but we used to call them washes back in the day. This is one of my favourites. Works really well when you're trying to do a rust effect. And then after that we're doing Reclan Flesh Shade. I'm having some trouble saying that. But yeah, we basically want to douse the entire model in that one, and then we're going to come back and do some highlights. That's right, we're back on the Bugman's Glow. So with our dry brush and our dry brushing technique, which is, you know, wipe it off mostly beforehand, we are going back over our boys. Now that we've got the Reclan's Flesh Shade down, this is going to bring out a lot more of the highlights on top and give it that sort of crusty look like it's been sitting in the sun. And here's our captain making an appearance again, and I'm thinking he's looking pretty good. Now for something slightly different, we're actually going to be doing the basing now. This is something I failed to tell you at the start of this, but you're going to need to pick up this orange sand. So I picked this up from actually a ant store. It's a store that sells stuff so you can keep ants in your house. I've done one coat here it'll probably need 2, otherwise you're going to see like the black of the base underneath. So here they all are with 2 done, and you can see it looks a lot better, a lot crisper, and you don't get that blackness underneath. I've also added a ton of sand onto the models. Don't go overboard with this because you can turn them into a Cheeto very easily, but with this out of the way, we're going to be moving on to some more highlights. So grabbing the electric blue and the whatever that blue is, however you say that. I've also done some white highlights in the parts that I want to do the blue, and with a watered down blue we're just going to put it into the eyes and the other gun parts. So this first blue that I actually put down I think came on a bit strong, and you can see that I'm not really putting it just on the white part, I'm also putting it around. I want to have like a really cool blue glowing effect coming off of these guys. I found this blue a bit strong, so I actually mixed it with some goblin green, and that really toned it down and kind of gave it a slightly darker vibe to this. And we're back with the captain, and he is pretty much all blued up. So you can see that I've got like that glowing effect going, and what I'm doing here with some white is just re-highlighting those areas. I know I didn't put white at the start of the video in the, you know, paints I use thing, but surely you got a white around. Black and white, ones you should always have on you. Alright guys, we are headed into the final stages here. So I'm just painting these cables black. I also painted these ones on the boss a bunch of random colors. I like to think of the idea of like them going through the desert and just finding things, ramming them all together so that they work. So I imagine, you know, they've repurposed a ton of cables here. That's why I've done a bunch of random colors, but you can do whatever you want to do at home if you're following along. And some very last touches here, I'm just taking some white and yellow and I'm just going to hit top of these bases with that. So there we go. You can see how much that adds, just putting that much on there. See how much that adds? Well, I think it does anyway. Last but not least, we're finally going to put these green bits in. So I hope Games Workshop does something like this again, because man, I just think it's like so cool, so unique. It does limit you on possibly having to leave them green, I guess. I'm not going to leave them green. Well, I ended up leaving a couple green just so that I could remember, you know, where they came from. So I grabbed some Griff Charger Grey. Now I actually went to the store to grab this, and without thinking, I know it says grey on there, but without thinking, remember I wasn't thinking, alright, this happens quite often, but I thought it was a blue, and I thought if I could get a blue contrast paint to go over the top of these, it'd probably work out really well. Fortunately, it was a grey. It's more of a bluey grey, so I think it worked out in the end. You guys can let me know in the comments below, but it kind of worked out that it looks like a burnt out core, which I kind of like the effect that happened, but it was all purely by accident. And with that guys, we are coming to the end. So I like to show off the models like this in sort of a showcase style, give you guys a really good look of how they turned out. But let me know down in the comments what you think of them, if this is something you're going to try, or if you followed along with this tutorial, please DM me on Instagram. That'll be linked down below. I'd love to see if anybody tried to recreate this, or maybe if you've got some tips for me that I could have done better, things I could have added, that would be really cool. These are the ones that I did with that Griffhound contrast paint, and you can see that it looks like a burnt fuse, which I think turned out really cool. Of course, my beloved scarabs, I stuck some bushes and some shrubs around as well. I didn't film that part. I figure, you know, you guys know how to stick a shrub or something onto a model, right? But anyway, I'm going to leave you with the rest of these, and then I'm going to be back with some final thoughts before we finish. Alright, so we are finally finished. So here they all are in their glory. Again, if you'd like to leave me some comments down below, I'd really appreciate that with what you think of these models, and possibly if you've got any tips for me, because I'm not that great, haven't been painting for that long, and I've had a big gap in my actual painting currently, but it is really good to be back painting some models. I really enjoy it. But at the start of this video I was asking, do you guys like the new models or the old ones? So after painting these old ones, I certainly think they have some sort of style to them that I really enjoy, but the new ones like this captain, they just got so many more details and things that you could really change, I feel. And here they are all together, and together I'm actually leaning towards the older ones. I actually think that the older ones kind of have a bit more of a charm to them. Not to say that I don't like the new ones, but I don't know, they're just a bit of a charm to them that I like a little bit more. But let me know what you guys like down in the comments below. Are you a new school or an old school? And do you think that Games Workshop should keep making the older models so that we can kind of combine them like this? So we've got the new scarabs and the old ones here. I actually much prefer those old ones. But yeah, I'd love to hear your takes down below. But I would love for Games Workshop to continue to have these older models that we can use in the game with the newer ones, because I actually don't think they look too bad together. I think maybe if you stand back and look at them from a distance, probably wouldn't even be able to tell the old ones from the new ones. But I'm really happy with the way that they turned out, and it feels like I've achieved part of my childhood that I always wished that I had with doing these older models, because I always loved the look of the old Necrons, so maybe I am biased towards them. And of course next time we're going to be doing the old school monolith. Now I would like to get a new school one and do them together, but I don't really have the funds for that right now, and I'm trying not to spend money on Warhammer until I've actually finished painting the miniatures I have. I know everybody says that and many people don't follow through, but I'm planning on following through. Anyway, if you guys have enjoyed this video, please leave me a like. I really appreciate that. Any feedback and comments, leave them down below. Check out my Instagram, that'll be linked there as well. Thank you for joining me on this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.